Hello, this is Johnny and John, back with you again, and tonight we have a guest with us, Mr. Scott Rickard, and we're going to be talking with him about all kinds of things. And John,
and more
go ahead.
Specifically, we're going to be talking about drug contras and how these things have evolved throughout history, or recent history, and even going back to the 1600s in the Roman Empire. So this should be really interesting.
Yeah. Scott, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's a good opportunity to speak to a good group of people you guys have been able to gather. You know, we're lucky to be able to have our own communication channels. And we talked about this earlier before. This is a new sort of a new age for me. I left the agency when I was in my late 20s and in the late 80s, early 90s, and I had nobody to talk to. And it's been kind of nice over the last 5 years, actually, because of the advent of the population growing on social media and people communicating more effectively outside of their sort of conditioned channels. So it's been a good opportunity for me to meet incredible people like yourselves, and you guys have obviously a pretty decent audience, and so I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. I feel the same way. It's nice to talk to somebody that's been around, I guess you could say. I can't wait to hear what you have to say from your perspective on some of these issues. Go ahead, John. Interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say we were going to let Scott Rickard sort of freestyle the beginning of the show, because he has a lot of interesting points to bring up on a lot of these subjects that all correlate and have a very interesting view that we'd like to show on this show, and from a guy who's actually worked in the U.S. government and who's had a long history of having to deal with these things.
Right, directly in the intelligence community. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I'll start out to give you just kind of a brief thing how I got kind of tied up in this. I was a young kid, and I grew up in the military. My father was in Vietnam, and my father was over in he actually built some secure communication systems for the Army. I went to high school in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. I went to high school in Heidelberg, Germany. I went to high school in New Jersey. And he was building systems, different kinds of systems, and teaching other military guys about technology at the Command General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth. And he actually built some of those secure communication systems that ran across Europe for the military. He also designed a bunch of equipment that basically was, I called it the Firefinder platform. It was kind of a predecessor to the Patriot missile. In the 70s, when I was going to high school in New Jersey, there's an area out there called Evans Lab. They were developing a lot of different advanced technology. So with a computer science degree and a chemistry degree, my father was pretty much embedded as a Vietnam veteran in this kind of machine that the Americans have grown to obey and love, I guess. So. And growing out of that, I joined the service at a very young age. I was a linguist, and I traveled all over the world, and I was lucky enough to learn some things from that. But to be honest with you, it's very stovepipe. Some of the things that you learn, you're just told. I don't know if you guys saw recently the NSA talking points that NSA sent home with their employees over Thanksgiving, but you're told the party line. It might as well have been any whatever government you want to make fun of this week party line. So, and that's I was part of that. I kind of thought I was doing it.
Indoctrinated as slaves.
I was incredibly indoctrinated. But don't get me wrong. I wasn't this kind of guy who was following all the rules or anything. I was just I thought I was on the on the right.
You told me that you went to elementary school in Hawaii. That must be cool.
Go ahead.
That must have been really cool back then, because Hawaii probably wasn't the place that it is today, the touristic hellhole.
Yeah, I imagine it was different then. I was pretty young. It was in the early 70s, right before the Americans pulled out of Vietnam, and it was, I'm sure it was a lot less developed than it is now. We used to stay in these little wooden cabins along the beach in Waianae, and I think it cost like, $5 a night or something like that. And it was a different time. It was, my mom was on her own, and my brother and I were like two wild goats. We did whatever we wanted and never wore shoes. You didn't have to wear shoes to school, so it was a different time. And it was after that, we moved back to the States, and it was hard wearing shoes. And I
Johnny Appleseed.
Yeah, and I went to school in Kansas for a while when my dad was teaching in the Command General Staff College, and this is kind of a place where they if you're up and coming in the Army, they're basically using their educational system to give you their party line. Yeah, and my father was involved in it. He believed in it, and I think he questions it, in his own way. He certainly questioned what we did in Vietnam after he came back. I think that affected him in a pretty bad way, but he got out of the military, and he worked for Motorola. He worked for other companies that were manufacturing the same kind of stuff.
Been very savage to soldiers, especially, and people who worked in the military, because even after World War II, you had these huge veteran protests happening.
Sure, that's how the Hells Angels were built out after World War II. Sure.
Howard Zinn actually bombed, a lot of people in Europe. And Western. So
a lot of guys, they showed some remorse for it, and other guys just think they did the right thing. Now, my job wasn't kind of like that. I had a pretty, I got to tell you, when I went into the service, it was either that, my parents were pretty upset that I dropped out of high school, and they didn't want me at home. And they said, I asked them if they signed some paperwork so I could join the service at the age of 17. And so they signed.
Thompson did the same thing.
Who's that?
Hunter S. Thompson.
Oh, I did? I didn't know.
Yeah, and he spent 3 years as a journalist working embedded in the U.S. military.
No, interesting. Well,
that whole generation, of people who've had those experiences with the U.S. military who've actually come out, against it.
Lee Harvey Oswald actually was a 17-year-old when he joined the military. He was also a Russian linguist that went to Monterey. So that it was. I'm not comparing myself to him. I'm not planning to shoot anybody anytime soon. But
especially not for the CIA.
Yeah, not for the CIA. But what's interesting is I kind of found I left. I got to Monterey, and I didn't really care if I got thrown out or not. I was obviously we talked earlier, going to dead shows up in San Francisco, and having kind of way too much fun for a 17-year-old. And then I went out to Okinawa, and I was collecting intel against North Korea, flying around in planes up along the Sea of Okhotsk and the DMZ and the North and South Korean border. It was an excellent opportunity. By the time I stopped doing that, I was only 19, 20 years old. Came back to the States, and I was doing the same thing down around Nicaragua, Honduras, and Cuba, and doing some different things with. We did do a Grenada war at the same time, and so I had kind of little bits and pieces, and all along the way, I kind of got to see the chinks in the armor, so to say. Give you an idea what I mean by that. Here we are. About ready to go in with our asshole allies, the British, to go against the Falklands, right? Mm-hmm. And Jesus, I mean, to be honest with you, the British would have been totally dominated in that war without our help. Would have wiped. They would have lost incredibly. The same kind of thing goes. If you look at Grenada, that was pretty much most of us. There was a few British, but we did most of that. And Grenada was another thing I was pretty involved in, and that was obviously, we wanted to get rid of a guy who was there. We didn't like the fact that the guy was coming in, so there were two different things happening there that we didn't like, and so we ended up, to be honest with you, getting involved in something we shouldn't have gotten involved in. We didn't want, and a lot of people, there's two different angles on this. Some people say that we overthrew a government that we didn't care for, and other people say that we were trying to keep the Cubans and the Nicaraguans from having a sort of their own little weapons depot. But either way, I can tell you both are somewhat correct. There are different areas in those, and the interesting thing I learned from that, talking about chinks in the armor, is that you saw, giving Grenada as an example, here we always say, well, let's go, we're going to do this intel operation against Grenada. It's like, well, let's go get the maps. We didn't have any maps. Nobody had run any kind of mapping operation over Grenada in the 80s. I mean, the satellite mapping of the planet hadn't been done at that level, and you had to run an SR-71 or some kind of other type of aircraft to go in there and get the right kind of maps. So we were actually operating with tourist maps. So nice. that ought to make you and that was just in the mid '80s. So. And at the same time, you also had, we were using all this Intel gear, and all these different...
You mean they didn't have Google Earth back then?
No, definitely not, man. Definitely not. And we basically had this Intel gear where we had to go and, have these communications with each other. And I'll tell you, it was a miserable failure. We learned how difficult it was for us to actually use the technology that we had acquired and not tried to implement on as such a immediate short. When you're planning an exercise, everybody can prepare for it. Mm-hmm. But when you're given a week's notice to go in and run an invasion. Obviously, that's not like planning an exercise that you're going to run in and around Nellis Air Force Base, because most of the exercises at those times that we were involved with all being run out of Nellis. So that's that's kind of a background to me, and I got out of the service at the time. I went over, studied Arabic, and I went over after a short tour in Greece, came back, worked for NSA for another short tour, about a year, and I pretty much had seen enough. I kind of saw a lot of drug running, saw a lot of surveillance of people that didn't know they were being surveilled. Even back at those times, we would sell equipment, to people that thought that they were our friends, and we were basically listening to every word they talked about. They thought it was secure, so there was, we told them it was secure, but maybe against the other people that we didn't want to listen to them, but not for us. So everything that Snowden said, I said at the time. We turned state's evidence over for Iran-Contra and the actual knowledge. We all knew, everybody knew that Bush and Reagan, H.W. Bush and Reagan were completely implicated in Iran-Contra, but give that to the department.
I was saying the same thing to Jonathan earlier, is how, what's interesting with Snowden's case is that it came out after, Anarchadia, and it was a friend that made me come to this realization is, one, Snowden's from Hawaii, or lived in Hawaii, like me. Mm-hmm. He went to another country, Russia, which is under control, I'm sorry to say, by CIA Putin. Mm-hmm. So, and Medvedev before, Teddy Medvedev, who was a great CIA asset. I'm pretty sure they got a secret civilian award, maybe.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because if you want to tie that back to something interesting that happened in the 60s, right before, as a part of Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, as a linguist, supposedly defects from the United States, go through Finland, who's a very friendly American ally and British ally, and goes into Russia. Now, you would have to be a pretty knowledgeable guy in the 60s to know that you can catch a flight out of Finland going to Russia. there's not a lot of people would have known that. Only State Department people knew that that's a good way to get in and out of Russia.
Well, he was an operative in Russia. He worked for the CIA.
Oh, absolutely, he did. And when he got there 6 months before they shot down Gary Powers in the U-2 program.
Yes.
Now, he was actually a Marine Corps guy that worked the communications platforms on the downlink signal collection platform as a linguist. And so he knew about all the ways that the U-2 would operate, and he would have been able to share the information with the Russians about that, and also understand what the Russians were up to and how they would actually shoot it down. So I believe he was sent there to basically purposely shoot down the U-2 and figure out how the Russians did it, to basically test and understand what their surface-to-air capability was. And so let's send this guy over, because when he came back to the States, he wasn't incarcerated. He was out passing out flyers, dating a girl who's manufacturing, weaponized cancer, he certainly didn't have a job, and he had plenty of money. So, certainly had enough money to get to Dallas that fateful day. So,
meet up with the CIA regularly.
Yeah, I'm sure he had some fun, places to go visit. So that's the same kind of thing that Snowden might be. That's why I was kind of alluding to that. Here's Snowden, like you said. Here's a kid who, obviously very intelligent. He speaks way more eloquently than I can. He's a lot younger than I am. So, he's kind of divulged a lot of things that a lot of us knew anyway. So he's kind of like, okay, let's let him, confirm a lot of things that are already out there. And so now the masses will know what the 0.01% or maybe 0.1% thought might be true.
Right.
So and it doesn't hurt them, because now he's a renegade, and rather than announce it to us and admit to it, which makes them look like now they got a scapegoat, who can give this up. Now, is Snowden that much of a toy? Well, let's see what happens when he defects and he comes back.
There's two things. We were talking as well about Julian Assange, who worked for
same kind of guy.
Australian Secret Service ass. There's a very good chance. And plus, if they wanted to have him killed, like we were saying this earlier, it would be very easily done. In the middle of London, make him look like he choked on some food.
That's the thing too, is that once again too, it's it is also it captivates us. It gets us off target. It gets us thinking about other subjects, and the main subject here is that we live in a global economic warfare, where the bombs and the invasions are just symptoms of the real underlying exploitation of the people and the resources in those nations that we're just kicking around the planet.
Well, I read recently that Echelon back in the 90s with Clinton, I think it's the late 90s, right? Clinton was president in the late 90s, I'm not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and they were spying on Airbus, and they stole billions of dollars worth of information through Echelon. And Bill Clinton went publicly, gave a speech, saying how the CIA had saved the American people from billions of dollars in losses in the aerospace industry or whatever.
Yeah, so the economic, a lot of the work, they'll deny it, but a lot of the work that's being done from a intelligence collection perspective, it is 100%, being done at the NSA. The FBI, does a little human, but at the end of the day, they are major consumers of the incredible, massive infrastructure of data. It's just a tsunami of data and the analysis that you can do electronically today.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the NSA just process that data? Doesn't really gather intelligence?
No, absolutely not. They actually write incredible intelligence reports. They do a lot of analysis. They basically, it's kind of like panning for gold. They look at every...
I understand that, but they also, publish a lot of interesting things, but that intelligence is not the intelligence that is acted upon, right? It's the CIA's duty and the Department of Homeland Security.
Not really. It depends on the consumer. Like, okay, so the CIA kind of operates as a, it's obviously the spear, the tip of the spear when it comes to the interaction at a diplomatic level. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the
FBI as well.
Oh yeah. But I don't know if you guys are familiar with the infiltration of Stratford. When they broke into Stratford about 2 years ago, the guy just went to prison for it. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But these guys, Stratford is to the CIA what Blackwater is to the Department of Defense. These are basically guys who are outside the infrastructure that are acting in the same way as as the Blackwater's paramilitary. I would say Stratford's para intel. So you have these intelligence operations, but the actual guys that are sort of the metadata of that are the NSA guys. These guys will, they're the ones that, if you're going to have a guy that's going to put the puzzle together for you, I don't know if you've ever read The Puzzle Palace, an excellent book, but if you're going to have a guy that puts the puzzle together for you, these are the guys that are going to be able to help you show where the pieces are. And you also take an advantage when some people retire.
But you can make the argument that they're like kind of like Google, and
no, absolutely. Absolutely. Google
and Facebook don't go out killing people. They tell the CIA, and the CIA does it, or the FBI.
Well, Google's a good one actually. There's a think tank that was founded by Eric Schmidt, and Eric Schmidt's an interesting guy because here's a guy who was also the CEO of Novell. And if you're a techno-weenie, Novell has an incredible background with the U.S. government from just as much as like IBM, Oracle, and so on and so forth.
Especially Oracle.
Oh, sure. And when you got a guy that goes to Google, and this guy's incredibly tied at the hip to the government.
You know why he was brought onto Google, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because there was a Russian they didn't want being CEO of Google.
Not really. No. They're believe me, they all understand what they're doing. There's no way Sergey and these guys are absolutely knowledgeable. It's just as anybody else at these government. They realize, there's government revenue. I mean, they make as much government money, guys at Google and guys at...
the problem is when you bathe these people with so much money, they kind of lose perspective of their objectives.
Well, I wouldn't say they lose perspective. They have...
And I'm just saying from an intelligence point of view, Sergey was very contradictory. They didn't really trust him, so what better way than to put a Jew, you can say like Jeff Rothschild, for instance, somebody really entrenched in the City of London Corporation and works with the Europeans. You see,
but see it's a kind of a good example because Rothschild's a great example because you're going to throw finance in the game. Okay, now you got finance in the game, that changes the picture for anybody. Definitely wealth corrupts, and also at the same time, he's not in control of that company. He's in the United States. That company operates within the United States, and if he doesn't go along with
that's the same excuse for Facebook. They say, "Oh, we're in the United States. We have to abide to a certain."
No, that's not. I'm not saying they're using it as an excuse. I'm saying these are facts. These guys are not allowed to act autonomous.
It has to be pretty organized, because when the NSA, Edward Snowden came out about these things and went to Russia, he said, Facebook and Google, Eric Schmidt and Mark Zuckerberg immediately posted on their public spaces the fact that they had no involvement and anything that had warrants they were obligated to do, which was total bullshit. And they were also saying that the U.S. military, the U.S. government has no access to Facebook and Google servers, while they're forwarding these services around the world to governments all over the world, telling them, "Look at this great Nazi equipment we have that we."
Well, I think you're giving them more credit than they deserve. These kids, they created some technology, right? Yeah. And obviously they got paid gobs of money, And they were always, a lot of them were
Rothschilds. I'm not talking about Mark Zuckerberg. I'm talking about the people who come in, because even Mark Zuckerberg had a lot of meetings with people from the Pentagon, when he first created Facebook, and these were practically public. People were exposing it, wondering why he was having all these weird meetings with.
Oh no, that's very common. No, that's the same thing. I mean, these people are in a system that they can't, they cannot affect, to be honest with you. If you want to go to the highest levels, you look at guys like Howard Cox. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's probably one of the most powerful guys in the position that you're describing. He sits on the board of NQTEL. He sits on the board of Greylock Capital. He sits on the board of ISO Group. I mean, if you know anything about witness systems,
he's powerful in America. You see, America.
No. These guys are some of the most powerful people in the world when it comes to the intel community's interface with those people that you're talking about.
I don't know. From a strategical point of view, I'd have to disagree just by the simple fact that families like Jeff Rothschild, Eric Schmidt, these old families that come out of the UK, have a long history of doing these things, and they're particular people, put into these axes of power, and they control technically the global financial empire, as we call it. So
they do.
It's just as Australia, just as Canada. These are just corporations. Just as the British monarchy is a corporation put out publicly to drag all the attention while they work behind these actions.
They absolutely do, but I think it's incredibly myopic to think that they have that much I guess, overall control. And here's why I say that. You have to take into consideration the kinds of operations that are in place, outside of their own knowledge and their own capabilities to understand. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about, things that are going on at places like DARPA, and things that are going on at places like the Defense Intelligence Agency, and things that are going on at DISA. And these are operations, these are military infrastructure operations, where they have guys like my father that were trained. These guys aren't operating because my Rothschilds knows what the hell's going on. These guys are operating on an infrastructure that is like a runaway train. It's what's that?
It's a Ponzi scheme.
Well, I wouldn't say that. It's a runaway train. It's a runaway train where these guys have unlimited budgets. They're able to create and do whatever they want with the people they want. They can take incredibly naive children out of school, make them billionaires, and then take advantage of their companies at will. And be honest with you, Rothschild might, sit up at night and go, wow, I had something to do with making that happen, but he certainly doesn't pull all the, tighten all the shoestrings up. So, I mean, I just think that it's not that simplified. No doubt. I mean, I'm not surprised how much influence they do have.
Jeff Rothschild originally was just brought on to help out with huge, massive traffic management. But what exactly did he do? He was using all that traffic, creating fake pages like Truth Beckons and that new guy Tom Retterbush, but a whole bunch of people, to go to these huge pages, and they gathered, a lot of likes, compared to non-profits like ours. So these were limited hangouts, not only to gather these huge amounts of people who might be more politically astute, therefore to brainwash them.
Yeah, that's a different subject. I mean, when you're talking about when you're controlling communications, which is what you're alluding to.
You don't control the world through money, you control the world through knowledge, and Jeff Rothschild is no fucking idiot. This guy is, from a long line of people who genocide poor people for profit. And
I totally agree. Communications is far more powerful than weapons.
That anarchists for a long time. Even Napoleon was literally funded by the city of London, to kill anarchists and the first anarcho type of people and the communists, to just massacre them while saying that it was a civil war or whatever. But this is just like
because he controlled the communications and created basically a 100% facade about
the British Empire to control France.
Yeah, that happens over and over again. I mean, if we can go back to the beginning of the show, even the Roman Empire did the same thing with their communications. Obviously, it wasn't electronic, and it wasn't even, it was very rudimentarily printed. So that's the the criers and the guys delivering, and the guys, the people that were loyal to the empire.
But I add this for the audience. It's very important, to mention this, because we like to live on our little bubbles today, but the problem with all of the censorship of information and knowledge is that even the people in power do not understand the fact that thousands of years ago under the Roman Empire, the Greeks, they all had psychological warfare programs, and they all, came to these, they all made as we make today, doomsday type Hollywood movies, even back then in their old theaters, and they even had this, they replicated it like we do today with bunkers underground, is the fact that the Roman Empire had huge lines of tunnels going under their cities, so that they could hide anytime, just as the United States has huge, massive tunnels today, and they have the ability to hide under these and during sieges and stuff. So history is perpetuating itself, and we need to.
It definitely hasn't changed much. No, it hasn't changed much at all. I mean, even like you mentioned with the Greeks. I mean, look what they did to Socrates. I mean, they basically, because he was probably one of the most outspoken and really objectively critical. They basically sentenced him to death, and he ended up killing himself. So, and that's that same kind of mentality is what the Romans had done, what the Prussians had done. This is the human race. These are the people that we are. We have an incredibly warring faction of not the individuals, but of the governments that exploit the individuals, for their economic and political means. And that's that hasn't changed at all. And the only thing that has changed is the face of it. The face of it is made, into Coca-Cola commercials. It's made into,
even with
video
Nazis,
games.
The Nazis and the British Empire, they have a long history, even with Arthur, the King Arthur. Mm-hmm. This was all linked to the Roman Empire and this idea of imperialism.
Right. No, well, actually, the thing is that there was always a lot of animosity between the Prussians or the Germans and the British, because a lot of the defectors during the war between the Prussians and the British defected to England, and they were considered to be, basically in breach of Prussian law. And so they've always had sort of an adversarial relationship since the Roman War with Prussia. So that's kind of why, if you take a really close look, the British were far more effective alongside the French at teaming up. Look what they coerced the Americans to do against the Spanish during the Spanish-American Wars, and they had us basically as conquistadors wipe out the Spanish Empire on their behalf. And the same thing they're doing now with all the old British wars from the 1800s and mostly 1800s and early 1900s. We are fighting all their wars, borrowing money from their 300-year-old banking system.
Well, what's interesting with what you're saying is that Anarchadia is always defending poor people or whatever, but the principle behind that, as you were saying, the Prussians and all these immigrations that happen, is a lot of poor people, middle class or whatever, what have you, these were the old social networks. These people knew that rich people were constantly trying to screw them, just as we know it today. They developed huge networks which are almost as good as ours today. We like to boast about ours, but theirs might have taken more decades or whatever to get through to people, but they got through to people because they were based on this culture of oratory speech, so that they would recite and learn these stories of their ancestors.
Well, I think the Commonwealth Wars of the 1600s are probably the most successful. That was when the British Empire had lost a lot of its dominance throughout some areas throughout, modern-day Europe.
But we have a tendency to think that most people have a tendency to think that these people back then were just uneducated and stupid.
No, I mean, I'm sure that they lived in a far less clinical manner. They didn't have the advances that we have today, from a technological and manufacturing perspective. But I mean, at the same time, I like to go back to the 1600s because this was the last time that people rose up against empires that were dominating their cultures.
That's we really haven't. The City of London Corporation and the Glorious Revolution.
Exactly. And that's, that, and then if you want to tie that, that's a good, segue in sort of the drug trade at that time. The drug trade was used as a method to basically sedate and dominate the people, through mechanisms of, obviously addiction. And, absolutely. And one of the things that I mentioned prior to the show was the sort of the allied nature of Scandinavia and England in the global drug trade, which really focused on China at the time because of the East India Trading Company's shipping dominance and the kind of real incredible profiteering, economic exploitation, however you want to call it, that was orchestrated by the British as they rose to power and wiped out the French and the Spanish alongside the Americans. Mm-hmm. So you have one of the things I mentioned prior to the show. They were shipping 70,000 tons of heroin, which is twice as much as we produce today. About 70-80% of that in Afghanistan alone. But 70,000 tons of opiate-based or heroin-based drugs to China alone. And the guys that participated in that, and a lot of it was grown down in what modern-day Burma is, and the guys that participated in that were the Dutch, the Norwegian, and the Swedish shipping empire, especially the Jebsen family. If you look up even today, the Jebsen Group, it's one of the most powerful shipping groups in the world. Yeah. And so you're looking at hundreds of years of allied relations, even before the American revolution. It's
kind of the microcosmic effect of what happened in Greece, with the huge ship liner companies, that were
certainly
smuggling.
Yeah, after World War II, that's exactly right. It was a very similar effect. And I don't know if you've ever taken a cruise, but I would say more than 50% of the time your captain's Norwegian, and there's a good reason for that. And there's it has a major effect on global shipping. I was also telling a story earlier before the show about a winery out in California. It was one of the first wineries built out there. Niebaum Coppola. It was purchased by Francis Ford Coppola, but Niebaum was a Norwegian immigrant, and he ran ships for the United States between San Francisco and the Klondike, bringing gold down from Alaska. And so, and at the same time, he was funded by Americans and British. In fact, at the same time, the British were paying Americans, 40 pounds sterling for Californian scouts. Because if you look at the proclamation, it was only about a year long, but it killed off half the Indian population in California as a part of the gold rush out there, because they were disrupting the excavation of gold. So and that was funded by the British in the United States to slaughter indigenous people. for the just like the conquistadors in South America. So, these underlying, sort of things all tie back together into this global shipping trade. And that shipping trade has dominated economics, even as much as today. And then obviously China's become a new sort of power to challenge the empire. But it has absolutely no capability, just like Russia. I mean, Russia was beaten down into submission, 3 different times, in the last century alone, and done in concert, with the French, the British, and the Americans, and unfortunately the Germans were duped into doing it by the French and the British as well. So it is a highly orchestrated machine that really understands finance and has much higher levels. It works way outside of governments and people's sort of puppet or elected officials. Does that tie back into the financial environment? Absolutely. Does it tie? Today's even just the heroin trade today is a $600 billion industry by the time it makes it out of the illicit trade and the pharmaceutical trade.
Yeah, it's a mechanism of control, just social control, just like religion or all those other things.
Well, it's financial. If I can move around on a ship, 100 tons of pistachios, or 100 pounds of heroin, I'm going to make a heck of a lot more money out of 100 pounds of heroin. So it's a size. I don't have to burn as much gas. I don't have to take it to space. Obviously, so it's all about the economics of the end product, and that end product is incredibly, for the amount of effort it takes to create it. The profits, are just out the roof. I mean, the average farmer is only making $5,000-$10,000 a year, and by the time it gets out of the in-country transport in southeast Afghanistan, whichever direction it's going in, those guys that are handing it over, are making 100 times profit on the first transaction, and anybody else after that is happy to make 5-10 times profit. So that's and then those guys that are making the 100 times profit are the same guys that are controlling the kinds of drug trades that we're seeing coming out of Mexico, kind of drug trades that we're seeing coming out of all over the South American environments, and obviously there's still not as much, but there's still some coming out of Southeast Asia. So it's an incredible history when it comes to the United States, because we were basically saving the British twice from their instigation of war with Germany. Both World War I and World War II, Germany was being treated like Iran is being treated today. The world was ganging up on them, embargoing them, doing economic, and this was way before, anybody talked about attacking anyone. And the Kaiser was sick of it. He's like, look, you're making me operate on an island here. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was taking back Austria that had just got their independence from England in the 1600s. And, he's like, these are my Prussian brothers. You're not going to do this to Austria, too, because they are already allied with the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Dutch, the Belgians, the French. Germany was surrounded. They had no allies on their borders. And so, they would, look at Iran the same way. Show me one ally on Iran's border.
That as well.
So, and we've got probably, some smaller than others, but somewhere around, 60 to 120 different, outposts and small operations, surrounding Iran, and that's and it's exactly the same issues. This has nothing to do with nuclear development. has everything to do with the economic independence of a country that operates outside a 300-year-old banking system extremely successfully.
Well, let's continue to our next point. I don't know if you were able to familiarize yourself with Linda Couture's case.
I did look a little about it. What did you want to talk about that?
No, because we want to show as well, how it has a profound effect, this whole drug industry, especially, with meth. I have a real problem with meth because not only does it destroy millions of families, even maybe, a lot of millions.
It's extremely like his heroin, yeah.
All over the planet, but as well, it's being used because one of the main ingredients for it is Sudafed, so it can be made from a pharmaceutical product which can be sold legally.
On the industrial side, the Sudafed is totally out of the picture. They're making it from scratch. I mean, 80% of the meth is coming out of in the United States is coming out of Mexico now.
But it's
what's that?
Products that you buy legally, though.
Yeah, but that's, comparatively to what's coming through out of Mexico these days, obviously it's just as destructive, don't get me wrong. And, at least they make, in the States, they make you swipe your driver's license, so at least they know who's buying it. But the point is that, that from a end user perspective, that is probably less than 3% of the destruction, and the rest is I would say if you look at like Shorty and his involvement with the Americans have been very closely tied to the Mexican drug trade for I'd say probably the 70s have started to get really popular because of the cocaine transport, but a lot of it really became more popular when they started to crack down on it, when the Mexicans and the Cubans were at war in South Florida. So once, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a documentary called Cocaine Cowboys. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's actually very accurate on on sort of the turn of a lot of the drugs were being brought in originally in Florida, Arkansas, and Tennessee.
The simple fact that because when you're making this product, Sudafed, you're using chemical ingredients that are created by corporations. So say you know about investing in it and get rich because the stocks in that product, that ingredient, have skyrocketed for no reason. It's a product that's absolutely unnecessary for most of humanity, and yet we're getting more of it than we feed poor people today, And
but you're looking at it's a culture of drug abuse. Americans consume 50% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs, and we only make up 5% of the world. So I kind of equate it to the opium wars in China. Here we are, the mass, sort of producer of these, military warfare machines for the system, and at the same time, take these drones and get them all looped up so they don't rebel.
But it's kind of sad, actually, because we have all of this intelligence. Like, these people have names and addresses if we wanted to put them in prison because they are the real culprits behind these strings they pull. We could do it today because we have this access to all of this information.
But our audience is very small. That's we talked about that too. We have good information now. Better the information I have, on open source intelligence is far better than the information I had. Obviously I've been gone some time, but it's 100 times better than the information I had when I was working at the agency in the late 80s. So, but at the same time, the guys that are in the infrastructure today, they don't see it unless they go out to open source intelligence. So let's say they're still working for the machine. If they come across, so even some of my friends come across the things that I talk about and I write about, they go, hey, I read what you found, and I read what, that all turned out to be true, and I'm working for the government. I didn't know anything about that. So, and that's because they're working in stovepipes. They call it compartmentalized information. So, a lot of these guys, I'm not making excuses for them, But, just as I was, I didn't really start to feel as though, I had anybody I could talk to about this stuff until I was in my 30s. And, I didn't have anybody to tell. And then at the same time, once I made it into my 40s, I'm 50 now, but once I made it in my 40s, I didn't have a channel like this. And so now that there's a channel like this, how do you get people to tune in?
But the thing is, it's not now, because this channel has existed for thousands of years. It's one of the oldest channels in the world, and it revolves around poverty, poor people, helping poor people, which is also what a bunch of rich people actually fundamentally believe in, because they are rich and their lives aren't that great. They have a lot of sociological issues.
The channel is there, but the audience is rarely there until people suffer immensely. Typically societies don't rise up and combine forces until they've actually suffered.
We are at that point.
I wish, but not in the States. Unfortunately,
I constantly stress the fact, that 100 million women and children starve to death every 5 years.
Oh, for sure. Outside the States, that's all been exported. That's like a movie to Americans. I mean, that's like just a bad movie.
A bunch of people who feel so great about themselves, and they just, like a balloon, they deflate.
The Americans think they're helping those people. I mean, no, that they're living in a fantasy.
Not if Anarchadia has its way.
Well, that's why I say I like your optimism, but I think, breaking through the glass and, and their blinders, you guys are probably familiar with Edward Bernays, right? Yeah, so Edward Bernays is probably the master of modern propaganda, and this guy wrote the book on it called Propaganda in 1916. And this book, specifically the synopsis was basically how to use media to basically manipulate societies. And it's been incredibly successful.
But as all systems like that, they have huge failures, and these failures are presenting themselves.
Well, to a small audience, I'll give you that. I mean, I would wish that our audience would grow faster. It's kind of like trying to cultivate,
The problem is with U.S. intelligence is that it's not very intelligent. People have had cell phones since, poor people even have cell phones. They're not on Facebook, but they have access to cell phones, so
they're on Angry Birds.
And before in history, and not all poor people are stupid. Some poor people actually know that they're stratified by society to be poor and actually like to intellectualize themselves immensely. And there are a lot of poor people that are neglected in this world. And when you take that as a mathematical equation, algorithmically, it's going to explode for the United States. That's why
if it does outside the United States border, the Americans and their allies will just kill them. It'll exterminate them.
When you apply so much pressure to one point on a constant basis, mathematically it will implode.
I hope you're right, but I see very little of that in my country. I see probably some of the most over-entertained, misinformed, ambivalent people that have ever walked the surface of the earth. So, I live here, and I'm among these assholes every day.
Yeah.
So you have absolutely no idea how ignorant of society that I live in.
Well, I know. I've lived most of my life in the U.S.
Yeah, so you have a lot more faith in breaking through these challenges that I see. Now, I hope that 2, 3, 4 generations from now, people have evolved better. But people have these incredible technologies to do the kinds of things we're talking about. But they're playing Angry Birds. They're totally. They might as well be masturbating all day long for me.
Alias jacta est.
What's that?
Alias jacta est.
It's that's some French or something.
No, that's Latin.
Oh, what does it mean? I'm sorry.
It's from the old Roman Empire. It's very important because it means the dice have been rolled. Even when you try to strategize and.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Attila, destroyed the Roman Empire. Never forget that. It was done by what they called the barbarians, etc. But no, these were organized people.
I totally agree, but I think, remember we talked about how the power of communication is more powerful than the weapons right now. And I think that the dominance, and you mentioned this earlier, the dominance of communications is, they take individuals like us, and when they see us doing what we're doing, they can easily, send us into our own echo chambers. So, our ability to get the word out, I'll use an example with newspapers, right? If I wanted to have a publication in my town, right? And I wanted to get this word out about, what's going on in town and subvert the corruption in my town. Well, if they don't want to make those publications anymore, they just burned down my newspaper plant, and I got no more money.
I'll reverse the argument.
Yeah.
I think that that old system that you're talking about is actually the one that is wrong, is going to fail. But yes, I might be crazy, but I seriously see it as this way because it's been going on for thousands of years. It has to crack, and I think it's on point if you look statistically throughout all of human history where we are at today. And I can definitely see that all of these things they talk about is, we can do all of this great stuff, or we can entrap everybody, put them in little mental cages on the internet. But in reality, what I'm seeing, I travel a lot, or I used to travel, now I'm too poor to travel, but I've been a lot of places, and I know that people are not as stupid. The power of observance within our species is immense, and we develop.
No, I think people do observe that there's something wrong. But I think getting them off their drugs and off their couches and off their entertainment media is that's something that I don't see very much progress in that space. I go to protests all over the country, and I gotta tell you, I'm constantly disappointed. And my God, this is all the people that they can muster. What the hell is going on here?
Those are not the real protests. It's like when you have 100,000 anarchists, anywhere in Europe, and there are a lot of them. There are millions, and this is a number that is censored. But when they protest, nobody talks about them. But when 500 coward neo-Nazis decide to join up and protest against gay people, suddenly they're all over the freaking planet, and they're being encouraged to do so. And when you have Obama leading civil war operations within the United States, trying to divide Hispanics against black people, against white people, against Asian people, you're creating a combustible system that will explode in your face. And this is what they're doing, And there will probably be a huge global war for the next 40 years. But what I'm saying is that we can avert these things, and the power to do so when we are at this critical stage where humanity will combust if we do not organize in this fashion, and not organize for a hierarchist cause, but for the survival of humanity. And this is what humanity will have to go through, I think, for the future. And I am one of those people. I'm an anarchist, and anarchism got me off my ass and got me to speak and got me to tell people about this. And then I see these people every day. Most of them aren't even on the internet. They live in squats all over Europe, and they know more about these subjects than I do, and they're never on the internet. So these people are just not talked about, but they exist, and that's the big point of anarchism, and why it will completely destroy hierarchism, and why the city of London has been fighting a covert war since the 1600s against these anarchistic behaviors, and even in ancient Greece they were doing it against Diogenes Sinope and his movement of cynicism, is that history is perpetuating itself. And I think that we talk about these barbaric ages. We're coming into a barbaric age, but we can create a barbaric age that is more informed than any other barbaric age in the past. And
I will agree with you.
That we cannot control the outcome of, but it's important to mention.
I will totally agree with you that the gadflies are growing, and you do have a much more encouraging sort of group of people. I've been I got to tell you, I've been totally enlightened by this entire capability of having my own intelligence collection platform in my house. I grew up on the Dewey Decimal System. I had access to tons of books. I did my share of book reading, and I also had access to these reference materials that they sort of weaned us on as children. So at this point in my life, I've realized that that was incredibly dishonest. It was there were a lot of things that I've grew up believing that were meant to put me in that particular channel.
But I'd say like 50 years ago, somebody of your stature who has worked in the government it would have been much more taboo for them, to mention what is going on than it is today.
Well, there were people. I mean, there were even fewer, and and they were very unsuccessful. But there were a lot of people who did write some great things. But let's just say that their ability to have an effect and change what was going on. A lot of them had to, expatriate because it was extremely, just like today, it was extremely powerful. You're up against a very formidable enemy, and the enemy is got a heck of a lot more money. I'm actually a delegate for the state of Florida in the Republican Party, and to be honest with you, I did that as a way to gather intelligence against the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And it's not because I'm a Democrat, but my county is dominated by a bunch of, war manufacturers. And, you could be, any party here, but, 70, 80% of the registered voters are the Republican Party. So, but if they were the I eat cat food party, I'd have joined that too, just to see what the hell they're doing. So,
there's like that old joke, the Republicans are for rich people and the Democrats are for the poor.
Well, not really. Both of them are for the rich. But the point is that. But the point is that as a member of that, I go to a meeting on a monthly basis in town here, where I haven't been recently, but this meeting of 200 people in a voting district that represents roughly 700,000 to 800,000 people, control the destiny of 800,000 people. 700,000 to 800,000, 200 people. And when I go to meet with these people, I mean, to have a conversation like we're having, there might be 5 or 10. And they control the destiny of this entire county. And there's nobody else doing anything. I'd be happy to take you to all the different places. Are you guys familiar with a band called Barbed Wire Dolls?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They are an anarchist band. They're one of my favorite. They're actually from the island of Crete. It's a punk band. It's my favorite punk band right now. And they're traveling throughout Europe. You might be able to catch them. I think they're in England right now. And I don't know if they're going through France soon. But when I went to their shows when they came through Florida, I mean, the crowd was tiny. And, we don't live in a society where we have a lot of anarchists that are, first of all, active, and secondly, organized.
But there's a little thing, we're talking about hierarchist slaves here. We're talking about people who have no knowledge, no power. And so, when you have these few anarchistic antennas placed all over the planet, there's a huge disruption. Howard Zinn talked about this. To defeat fascism, you need huge underground movements, and I think this is what we're experiencing today.
I wish it was getting bigger.
Anarchism is power, though, for individuals, because it means truth of information that is completely anarchistic, therefore completely objective, and not hierarchistic, therefore controlled.
I wish it was bigger. I'm having a very tough time, finding. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, privately go, "Man, I see what you do." But God, I don't want to risk my future. I don't want to risk this. I don't want to risk that. People don't want to give up the Bretton Woods comfort that we have in this country. Exploiting the rest of the country, the rest of the world. What's that?
Not in the upper middle class and the higher class.
Even the lower class. The lower class is getting it from the government. They're getting all the food and the drugs they need. The Oxycontin trade in this state that I live in, it represents anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a month in extra revenue for the guys that are on Medicaid getting
but these things are all futile. They're digits. But what is important, for instance, there are movements like Anarchadia all over the world in their own languages. Anarchadia is now in 10 languages, but there are different ones. We're not the only ones that are getting censored, etc. That we are able to amass thousands of likes from time to time and gather huge amounts of influences within these systems, and that's why, Jeff Rothschild had to come on board and create all these limited hangout pages, and that's why we have Edward Snowden, that's why we have Julian Assange, is because we need those things, because to take because people every day, are telling me I'm getting censored for permitting
it's called
stuff.
Counterintelligence.
I don't even know you.
This is a form of counterintelligence.
Like the people that don't even know me and had never had, get censored, and then they're like, oh wait, I just realized you're absolutely right, and obviously you have to have government trolls that come on and say, no, you're absolutely wrong, and then they come in and private message those people and tell them, don't you think that guy's crazy? Like, maybe you had like a moment where you were crazy in your head, and therefore you're maybe, and that's what the U.S. military is doing, and they did this in Iraq, with Operation Earnest Voice, and I've actually had been in contact with a lot of immigrants, in Europe, who came from the Arab Spring and all that stuff that happened, and from Iraq, during the Iraq wars, plural, but so long generations, and in France, where we have intellectualized socialist academia, you could say, where more people have access to this information, therefore can intellectualize themselves. Even
I would say in France you'll have better success, but in the States it's going to be, it's definitely an uphill battle here.
But the States is also like a crumbling empire right now. They don't even know what they're...
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you're going to say the States is a crumbling empire, you have to cascade that across the entire Western banking infrastructure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not really the States; it's the States and their allies, and the reason that the States are allowed to exist without any kind of any of the austerity measures that the rest of the world is being forced to undertake is because the States is the we're the sort of
corporation right now.
No, we're the stick. I mean, they're like, hey, stick, go hit this, and there's been some. I'm not going to say a lot, but there's been some I guess, realization that, hey, all those guys do is hit with a stick. And, that's what we've done, left and right. The things we did in Libya, unreal. Things we're doing in Syria, unreal.
But it's because now they're trying, like even Jeff Rothschild plans to go to Australia, when all the shit in when they caused their civil wars thanks to their great Nazi websites, plan to go to Australia, and a lot of Australians are really pissed off at their governments right now because, one, they're the most expensive country.
Australian government's been a puppet government since its beginning.
But
we overthrew them in the 70s.
They're waking up to their revolution is based on echelon. It's based on the fact that the British Empire is using Mossad to train Australian Secret Service, and all the Australians giggle and laugh about this because it's...
Sure, you remember the guy that was incarcerated and killed himself in prison in Israel?
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. No doubt. No, it's not, I mean, and it's not just Mossad. I mean, these guys operate in unison. I'll give you an interesting example of that. Everybody remembers the underwear bomber, this guy Abdul Muttalib, right? Mm-hmm. When he goes through the airport in Amsterdam, and you guys have traveled enough, you've been through that airport enough times. The airport in Schiphol is heavily surveilled. In fact, the surveillance system that's deployed there is a company called Verint. It's a software surveillance and video surveillance package that's basically you can't walk anywhere through Schiphol without being on a camera. Mm-hmm. There's just cameras everywhere. So this kid, supposedly leaves Sudan and goes through Schiphol and then gets on a Northwest flight going to Detroit. Well, when he walked through the airport in Schiphol, he was side by side with a gentleman that was in a sort of a brown suit. He's not American Indian, but Indian sort of face, and he spoke English with an American accent. He didn't have a British accent. So here's a guy walking him through the airport, getting him through customs without, not customs, but yeah, how when you go to the airport there, you don't really have to go through customs. You show all your stuff and check your bag at the gate, and you go through screening at the gate, so you can make it almost right up to the plane before you go through any security.
Yeah.
So when he's going up to that point, he's going through security there, and this guy's still with him and explaining to the guy at the gate who's about ready to let him on a plane, here's a Sudanese refugee, get him on, we vouch for him, and then they let the guy on the plane, and obviously he purposely unsuccessfully explodes this thing that probably just burned the hell out of his scrotum.
Yeah, well, I learned recently that and if I had known this at the time, I'd have been more vocal about it. But back during Operation Earnest Voice, and when they were saying there were all these car bombs and everything, they were funding Al Qaeda to tell poor people to go and kill themselves in the name of their god, which was actually this CIA, not their God.
Yeah.
You know.
So this kid basically, his father is the #1 arms dealer in Nigeria, and he's basically, here's a guy who's bought like $2 billion from the Americans, the Brits, and the Israelis, and his son's going to college in Oxford and down in the UAE, and he's yelling at his dad on the phone about how fucked up Nigeria's become because of the kind of business that his dad's in, and every phone call his dad makes is recorded by the Americans, so we know exactly what his kid's been saying to his dad. So his dad says, his kid says, I'm going to go down to Yemen and I'm going to join the revolutionary forces. So the kind of conversations we're having, and he decides he's going to become a terrorist. Well, they go, oh, hey, boom, bam, let's go get this guy. So he comes off the airport. He's meeting his new terrorist buddies. Where we've been there 30 years. So he actually thinks he's joining the terrorist organization. He gets out. He thinks he's joining a terrorist organization. We get him to put on this little makeshift thing that's going to not even blow up a Coke can. He get him through the airports, and then boom. Hey, look, we told you there's terrorists coming out of Yemen.
Jihadists.
Yeah, these jihadists, they're everywhere. And had he been successful, nobody would know what happened, right? And at the same time, where is the video surveillance of this guy walking through Schiphol? And who the hell was the guy in the suit that basically got him on the plane? That's public enemy #1 for me, and because that guy's not all over the map, and that picture's not all over the world trying to figure out who that guy is, that tells me right there that we're being lied to. So I know that airport inside and out. I've been through Schiphol at least 30 times. So there's no way that guy walked through that airport without multiple cameras getting him, and you've seen no footage of him going through that airport.
But from a more geopolitical viewpoint, Australia is the country of Ned Kelly, just as the United States was the country of Billy the Kid, and these people who would rob banks were against the British Empire, the financial empire of the city of London within the United States that was trying to corrupt these people. And the Australians are realizing that they're trying to perpetuate history of the U.S. in Australia now.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, Australia is a heavy ally of the United States. It's, unfortunately, these guys, much like the Canadians and pretty much every former British Empire's colony, we're very loyal to our masters. So,
well, I'm glad you think the same outcome as me for that, because I also think it's ridiculously stupid to do that.
Well, as well as the French. I mean, the French are very loyal to the British as well. So, adversarially.
French,
not the people. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the same people we were talking about earlier. The people with the money.
Constantly, they need to do their mind control operations in those countries to perpetuate those systems of control. But they're cracking, and they're cracking very strong.
But all it takes is some football matches, some beer, and a couple of incredibly good-looking women or men or however it takes on the entertainment side, and you've just captivated 90% of somebody's attention span for whatever time that you plan.
You've just disenfranchised the whole generation when you do it too many times.
Well, I wish that was true, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are, cheering for things that absolutely are meaningless. So,
the majority have never controlled the planet. Gotta remember that.
No, the minority is controlling the planet, but the majority has never been, I would say, like I said, over-entertained, misinformed, and ambivalent. I mean, it is an incredibly ambivalent society. I mean, I'm not as much. I would say in countries where people aren't as, marketed. I mean, we are an over-marketed society. The consumer mentality, in this sort of the Western societies is just sickening. I mean, it is unreal. I mean, sometimes I see these commercials of things that are trying to sell these poor children, and just because they see it on TV, they gotta have it. I mean, it's garbage.
My historical reference to that is cronyism.
Yeah,
cronyism collapsed because of that.
Well, I mean,
side effect where they would perpetuate greed, and it collapsed because of thanks to people like Charles Dickens. and now they're trying to redo the system throughout the world, and people are so confronted to poverty these days. I mean, you can go anywhere, take a wrong left, and you're in the middle of a poor place where people want to kill you because you're driving a nice rented car,
No, you don't have to go very far in the States to do that.
Yeah.
No, we have probably, it's, although we've offshored most of our racism and exploitation, obviously Americans are incredibly racist. It's just, it's not very well, it's not very well, I guess, not well, it's a very, behind closed doors type of situation now. Nobody speaks out about it, but it is an incredibly racist society.
What the CIA is doing to the United States right now is just terrible.
Well, it's not just the CIA. I mean, these situations are, a lot of them are associated.
It's not the CIA, but it's the MI6 influence fraction of the CIA, which is directly respondent to the City of London Corporation.
Well, we're still a pretty predominantly white culture. Now, there's a lot of, just like in Israel right now, where they're really worried about, being outnumbered by, obviously, non-white people.
There's a joke in China, going around that, the white people have finally let the yellow people in. They're too racist to let the more colored people join.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably not as, maybe in some states, but certainly there's a ton of Asian racism still in this country. Yeah. But
it's all economically related. Like, if you didn't have this,
it's skin color related. We're in this country, we're still 60+% white. And, Hispanics probably around 15%.
It's cause and effect. When you create these huge psyops operations, hate the chinks, etc., you're creating a perpetuated effect that will resonate throughout your society for the rest of its history.
Well, it's been predominant with societies forever. I mean,
that's why families like the Rothschilds for thousands of years have just been killing off people, recreating countries, recreating federalist states, etc.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as orchestrated as that. I think that people are afraid of.
It's like business, it's just knowledge that you learn and you use, and for thousands of years it served its purpose within humanity, and we've come to a realization that this purpose is completely combusted and systemically perpetuated itself into a destructive concept that will actually be going against us in the future. Because imagine if China became the new capitalist.
Well, there'll be an evolution. There'll be an evolution of slavery that will, further, China into another role. I mean, the same thing happens.
We'll have sweatshops.
Obviously, the evolution of slavery has changed. Whereby it's become more of an economic slavery, and also, unfortunately, in the U.S., incarcerated slavery. But we have, a society that, 25% of the world's incarcerated people are, in the United States. And once again, we only make up 5% of the world's population. So, and there's no country that exceeds us. We're number one. And same thing goes with the outsourced slave labor. Nobody takes advantage of outsourced slave labor more than the United States. So, it's evolved. Okay, maybe having somebody that lives in a hut, in your own property, and you can go sexually abuse them on a regular basis. But now you've got overseas, all you got to do is fly on an aircraft and go sexually abuse them in their country. So
have them FedExed.
Well, hopefully it's not quite that easy, but yeah, there is a lot of.
It turns out to be that it is, because Jackass, they recently did a movie with a stint while shipping a kid in a box.
Oh my God!
And the people that were shipping were actually saying, "Okay, we'll do it if you want us to do it." Obviously, it's a joke, but they would have done it, and you could see it on their faces. They were asking, "Does he have enough air? Does he have enough food?"
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, definitely human trafficking. We've got human trafficking problems.
And people are so enslaved they don't even realize, it's the real Stockholm effect is that we have people that, and you can see it, like the people that are awake are looking at all these zombies and seeing this, and yeah, we're at that state where everything can go into utter chaos. But
well, unfortunately, I mean, okay, so I went by the courthouse today, and that's a moneymaker. I mean, there's the line outside. You'd think they were giving away free beer, and the aspect of that is that that's a place you're forced to go spend money, and then the guys that are there running that, these are the jackboots of the American society.
But if you want to talk about it from an economic standpoint, there's the fact as well that scarcity equals profit, and anarchism right now is a very scarce resource that is very much needed. That's why I always say, anarchism. There's huge business in anarchism, not money-wise.
Problem is that these people are being given, their life. They're given the food that they need. They're given the electric that they need. They're given the housing that they need. I'm not anti social programs to help people that actually really need it. But what I'm saying is that in a society, when people do get to that point where if they were going to be anarchists in this financially enslaved society, instead of allowing them to suffer enough, they just give them just enough to keep them happy. Just enough to keep them off their backs.
Well, that's what now, and that's why their system's collapsing, because the only way they can go is forward. They can't go back anymore.
Well, the financial system, the Ponzi scheme is collapsed, but all it takes to fix that, in a very short period of time is
the whole imperialist strategy is to take things very slowly, and you have society combusting at such a speed that it's not linear compared to what we're trying to promote and propagate as a slave mentality. And always, with jazz music, with every movement that was underground and that completely took over, punk music, all of these things, I see this regenerative process within humanity that is accelerating compared to this decelerating process of fascism and killing people, which is completely...
I'd agree artistically. and I'd agree.
I'm an artist. I'm not a scientist or a mathematician.
You see, I apologize. I'm at the opposites. I'm a statistician. I mean, facts don't lie. And when you start peeling back the onion, I love the fact, the hope and the sort of the Renaissance was a good example of that. When you take people that have an appreciation. Here we're telling a story through what was a sort of a modern media at the time, and the same thing you're describing. Modern media through jazz or through punk, or these were modern media evolutions. And did they have a major effect on society? Well, I'd say probably not. Did they have an artistic effect on society? Sure. Yeah, I mean, we all got to enjoy something and escape it. And rather than doing heroin, that might be your escape, or rather than doing
without jazz music, Martin Luther King would have looked like a square.
Yeah. So but don't forget Bill Clinton liked jazz too. So, but the point is what's that?
He looks like a square, and so does Obama.
Yeah. So I mean, the artistic is a let's call it a drug-free outlet, but it still hasn't had the kind of effect that these institutionalized movements have had. Whether they be good or bad.
Even within drug movements, there's underground movements that are intellectual. Every time, take Baudelaire in France, take these Edgar Allan Poe in the United States, these movements have drastically affected the sociological compounds within human conception of reality. So these things are there. And
no, I totally agree.
People do not intellectualize them yet, but when we do, we will create intensity of information and knowledge and therefore power within the world that will collapse this system that is deteriorating, which I call fascism. And I could be completely false. And
no, I don't think you're false. I just think you're incredibly optimistic. I think that these things are, let's say you're getting stung by a bee, right? That's great.
I'm one of the least optimistic people
Well, certainly from an anarchist perspective, you're very optimistic from an anarchist, a successful movement of anarchy, which is, that's awesome.
No, every day, like even ask Lisa and Jonathan, I'm always like saying, fuck, it's going to destroy itself, it's going to die. And then they're always saying, no, it's going to keep on, you know.
Well, and I don't think it'll destroy itself like art, like music, you know, it is having an effect. I mean,
I'm the cynic. I'm the complete opposite. And you have this huge movement of cynicism created in the world. So it's not a movement of utopistic opportunism, as is the global financial empire's vision of the future, with cities like Dubai, which are completely unsustainable, with all of these projects that they put in place, which are completely futile and ridiculous, and to even, you know, GMOs, motherfuckers, those things are going to kill the planet. Not just poor people, they're going to kill rich people. So we're all in this. I'm sorry, I didn't say motherfucker to you. I was talking to people in general. But to the people who argue this point of view, no, it's collapsing already. We're seeing it, and it's not at all a movement of a utopistic vision. It's actually the opposite. It's like in ancient Greece with the Cynics, the first anarchists. And we're seeing a replication within history. And, you know, soon after Diogenes, you had Jesus, and these were all in the same region. So information back then might have not traveled as fast as today, but we're definitely seeing that period as a microcosm of today. And no intellectual can disagree with that fact.
Well, so I'll kind of disagree. I know the communication is out there, because, I mean, I'll give you an example. In the last 2 weeks, and I'm not transporting anything for business or for illicit or pleasure or anything like that. In the last 2 weeks, I probably put... Go ahead.
I said you wouldn't be here if you did. You'd say, screw these people.
Anyway, I'm not transporting anything for any illicit or business means. I'm driving around trying to do business in the community in which I live, you know, and it's a pretty large. The state of Florida is pretty damn big. So that's, you know, and in the last 2 weeks, I probably met with you know, over, you know, 150, 200 people. I probably put like, you know, 2,400 miles in my car. And it's interesting because, you know, some of these people are probably some of the most powerful from a I guess, what's that?
Palm Beach, you have most billionaires live there. One of them.
Yeah. I say powerful from a state sort of money generating perspective. These guys generate some of the most money I've ever seen. For, you know, hospitality industry is incredible in the state of Florida. You'd be surprised how much money that brings in. So the kind of people I'm meeting with, and these are guys that are, you know, actually deciding, you know, which plots of land. The land developers pretty much run this state, and they obviously they're tied into the pharmaceutical drug industry. They're tied into the illicit drug industry, and the entire you know, community, you know, lives in, you know, the fantasy doesn't stop at the borders of Disneyland or Universal, or, you know, it spreads, you know, from coast to coast. Because, you know, when you step off the plane in the United States, you're hitting Disneyland. So, and people have no concept of that. And, you know, every once in a while, and I'm telling you, of all the people I meet, every once in a while, there'll be that guy that's going to have the kind of conversation that we're having tonight. And you know, it's like, hey, oh, really? And it's like, and then, you know, if they follow through, you know, how many times have you know, given somebody a business card or got a business card and not followed through, right?
But I agree that anarchism is a diamond in the rough, but when it will be cut, it will be the most expensive and valuable diamond.
See, there goes that optimism again. But so what I'm up against is like, okay, how many people, and I'm not trying to build an audience for, because you guys had an incredibly more powerful audience before that EdgeRank kicked in.
Our audience is very decentralized. We're very...
Well, I'm talking, remember you said you have these kinds of likes and those kind of likes? You, as well as other channels, or they call them pages on Facebook and other places, you guys were getting a number of a greater number of likes before they implemented.
These are real likes. These are not Palantir software profiles.
Yeah, Palantir. Yeah. So that's funny. These, I agree, but my point is that you were getting real likes, and then they said, hey, these guys are making too much success. Let's write an algorithm that basically limits and minimizes their capability of doing this.
And especially privatized.
And guess what? And then we'll call it this thing, and we'll tell them that it's basically so that it's more targeted for what they're interested for. And oh, by the way, if you want to get around this, you can sponsor a link, but that's going to cost you money. All right, so but those used to be free. A year and a half, 2 years ago, all that stuff used to be free. We used to be able to have a more open discussion and get more people involved in the conversation.
We could go to the court with Facebook and say you'd always be free, because that is still their slogan to this day.
Yeah.
And technically they're free, but they're not free. And second,
they're making a ton of money. Are you guys familiar with Visible Technologies?
Yeah, I researched that. I think you shared that with Invisible Technologies.
No, Visible Technologies.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So Visible Technologies, look them up. They were another In-Q-Tel funded software development company, and they're one of the key platforms that's being used to analyze social networking intelligence. And so they monitor it, analyze it, and report on it. And so, obviously, they say, they can, the way that we can look at each other's like interactions and the way is just the tip of the iceberg compared to what these guys have. Now, every time that they have these sort of real-time and also not so real-time interfaces with Twitter or Facebook, those guys get a chunk of change from Local Sam. So, they're making more than enough money from their intelligence collection. And that goes back to what I was talking about with Eric Schmidt. Are you guys familiar with New America Foundation?
Yeah.
Okay, so New America Foundation, if you look on slide, what's that? Slide. What's that thing? Slideshare.net? Yeah, Slideshare. Have you guys ever used that?
No.
So I've got one thing that I gave a presentation earlier this year about to a bunch of SEO type people that are working sort of on the other side of the spectrum. They're creating the marketing thing that's occupying people's minds. And so I was out there. I was shocked that they would let me actually speak at this, because you had like senior executives at AOL, you had senior executives at other type of social networking environments and network places that were really part of the marketing environment. Here I'm out there saying that this is being used against us, and there's systems out there that are being used to basically put it into a more economic and consumer-based platform, and not into a intellectual communications platforms. And so companies like Visible Technologies, companies like Endgame. So if you go to slideshare.net and then /TELESECRET, telesecret, you'll see it basically goes into excruciating detail about this New America Foundation. This was founded by Eric Schmidt. It's a think tank that basically ties the CIA to Google. It's got guys working there. The cyber warfare, the head of the cyber warfare command, actually deputy of the cyber warfare command, is the father of Nicholas Schmeidel. Now, Nicholas Schmeidel broke the story on the supposed Osama bin Laden takedown in Abbottabad in Pakistan. And he broke it in the New Yorker. Now, this is a kid who made it out of college and then went straight to Pakistan and was working for an NGO writing reports, tribal reports. The guy didn't even speak the languages, so he was basically just a mouthpiece for the CIA in Pakistan for 7 years, and they tossed him out on his ear in 2009. And here he is writing the breaking the story on the Osama bin Laden takedown in the New Yorker. And it just so happens his father's the deputy of the Cyber Warfare Division at NSA, a 4-star Marine Corps general. So these are the kinds of things, when you're talking about, is Google tied to the U.S. government at the highest levels? I mean, Jesus, I mean, this New America Foundation is a complete interface. It's like a multi-channel interface to the NSA and CIA. And so if you go in to look at these guys, and you look at the history of the guys that are working there, and especially this kid, Nicholas Schmeidel, I've got his cell phone number. I called him. He's blocked me on Facebook. I've gone so far as to stalk his ass coming out of the offices up there. So the point is that he's just a young kid. His father was a general in the Marine Corps. His father didn't know shit about technology, and he's the deputy commander of the Cyber Warfare Command.
I don't know if either of you saw that movie Peoples.
No, what's that?
It's a movie. It's for black people, racist people would say. But no, it's a movie a comedy made by black people, which is pretty mainstream in the United States. But you can really see what I was talking about earlier, this transformation in conscience, because they show, what a real, family kind of like Obama is, and it's quite interesting because the dad's like, a really famous, popular guy, kind of like Obama, and the mother grows mushrooms and wheat in her garden and is organic, or supposedly. And things like that, and the dad's part of this cult, that has orgies on beaches and stuff. And so they're actually quite open, because black culture, African culture, within America, has developed this, the gift of gab or whatever, where they just speak their minds in freestyle, like with jazz. And so you see more what is going on, and when they say it's conspiracy, no, not necessarily, but it's the new type of mechanism of control, which instead of being like these movies like with Steve Martin and all that, which are complete bullshit and totally phony and have absolutely no truth or anything.
Well, it's still entertainment. I mean, there's so much more credible information. In that same presentation, I talked about another, really intricate thing. It goes back to the cover on my Facebook with Center for New American Security. That is yet another left-wing CIA interface.
Left wing between two quotation marks.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that the left and the right have their own. Brookings would be like one on the right, and
I actually think it's very insulting, when Americans talk about left wing and right wing, because it was created during the French Revolution.
I know what you're referring to.
Anarchists were right wing and anarchists were left wing. In terms of,
we don't have any. We have all right wing in that under that respect. Yeah, we don't have a left wing at all. So, but in the public's eyes, they believe that there is a what I call a for the people party, and obviously in the Republicans' eyes, the Republicans also believe that they're for the people, but from a different perspective, not as much from a social perspective, but more from a I guess what they try to say is liberty, freedom perspective. Mm-hmm. So and. But to go back to the particular individual, this guy, his father was the guy who created the Krugerrand out of South Africa, Nicholas.
Oh, what a bunch of great guys! Those guys.
Yeah. Well, he actually got his start. Once again, segue back to the drug trade. The Krugerrand founder was in the opium trade out of past World War II in Burma, and also throughout the Vietnam War, working for William Casey. Our good, who later became the director of the CIA, and so here's Nicholas Schmeidel's, or not Nicholas Schmeidel, Nicholas Deake's dad, the dad of Leslie Deake, Nicholas Deake. So Leslie Deake is the guy that I'm talking about, who's basically laundered money for Semyon Mogilevich, a Russian mobster we bought weapons for and traded drugs with, and but. Leslie's father, Nicholas Deake, was the #1 gold trader in the world for the CIA, for the British Empire, for the American Empire, and he was also heavily involved in the money laundering drug trade. He was thrown under the bus by Reagan during the Iran-Contra component, and then subsequently assassinated in his office by a potentially MK Ultra individual that was under some psychiatric treatment at Stanford University. So, this ties back into, his son is basically laundering money for a guy that we're buying weapons from and shipping out to Mujahideen in the 80s. And that guy works at Center for New American Security. He's a senior guy there. And, the CIA is all over that. And the guy that just ran the Center for New American Security just went to go build Endgame, ENDGAME. It's also in that presentation.
Yeah.
And that's a presentation I gave in January this year. Now, do you think I got any calls from Fox News or any calls from CNN to talk about any of these issues? And everything that's in that presentation is fact. There's no conspiracy theory. And then if I do get to talk to some of my friends that know these kinds of things, first of all, they're like, the end justifies the means, or however they want to justify how they're tied up in this crap. And obviously some just, hey, I don't have time to try to fight the system. Good fucking luck. So, and sorry about that.
Even my mother, is like that. So.
Yeah. Well, we are in a minority, and an incredibly small minority. And my friends all say, when something really bad happens to you, we'll all know why. So, that's why they gave me the nickname, the Beehive Slapper. But it's more like I'm like a modern day gadfly. And I have a lot better access to information than Socrates ever had. I mean, Jesus.
Yep.
You
are kind of like the butterfly effect,
Well, I'm hoping. I'm trying to smack as many hives as I can. And the problem is that people got their heads down looking at their angry birds, and I can't force you to look this direction. Oh, and I'll give you another interesting thing. My buddy is married to Megyn Kelly from Fox News, another, hypnotist for the United States people.
Yeah.
So, all you gotta do is take a hot chick, take her on a sales call, put her on a television, put her in the news. Hell, I like that person. What did they say? I don't know, but it sounded good coming from her.
She is probably
mentality of information gathering in the United States.
Oh, yeah. She's probably the most full of shit mouth on that whole channel.
Not in the Republican Party.
No, on that particular channel, that network.
Republican Party thinks that she if anybody said it, they'd say, oh, that's a good idea. She'd be great to go up against Hillary. Let's have the two lying bitches go against each other.
Right. 1 minus 30
They believe in God, so that everything they say must be true.
Yeah,
God's telling them what to say.
Look at the person that almost became vice president in this country. I mean, that was unbelievable. Have you guys seen the documentary on Sarah Palin called Sarah Palin, You Betcha?
No, I've seen some other ones.
Take the time to watch that thing. That is freaking awesome. That was one of my favorite, exposing the underbelly of stupidity in American politics.
Was that one about when she was in Alaska and everything?
Goes into excruciating detail about what a maniacal, ignorant person she was up there.
I knew that after the first 2 or 3 times she spoke. I think that she was just.
Oh, you wait till you see the details.
Moron.
This is you may have recognized it.
Yeah.
But this is like
it's like modern day female mafioso. She's just like those.
Well, no, she's nowhere near.
She's not smart enough for that.
Yeah,
I promise you.
It's just that in Alaska, that's 90% dudes that have no disrespect to Alaskans, but have a very limited amount of knowledge and education. When a girl gets on TV and winks, boo, I'm voting for that.
Plus, they work on oil rigs all day and shit like that. So.
Yeah, when your farm animals are starting to look good, you're in trouble. So it's a different society up there. These are very isolated, and there's some rugged guys.
But I mean, the Rookmans had that as well. The statues and everything, the little cults they created. All this thing is perpetuating itself. Nothing's new within these.
Well, it's just like the Klondike. This is just the modern day Klondike. It just has to do with whatever resource that they're exploiting, and to put people to work to, feed the machine. And oil happens to be
the whole thing about know your enemy. These people don't know anarchists because they're not trained to know the truth. What they're trained to know is lies.
Yeah. Well, the other side of that, if
a bunch of people doing that.
The Megan Kelly attack on that is the other side of the right wing is take a look at this thing called it's called the Billionaires Tea Party. Have you guys seen that documentary?
Yeah, I think so.
That is freaking awesome too. They go into excruciating detail about how they Pied Pipered all these truly right wing imbeciles across the United States and turned into that Tea Party thing. And it was completely orchestrated by the guys that run the oil industry.
There's Europeans for Solidarity. I forget what their name is. They're a pretty big page on Facebook. And they posted an image. It said American, and one on top of the image is a super happy little SpongeBob or something. Adorating capitalism on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is SpongeBob without Facebook. Nobody to adorate capitalism, just cry.
Well, the thing I gotta hand it to. It's not as good as it used to be, but I got to hand it to Facebook. At least it's become a channel for me where I can figure out, things that I don't. Obviously our news feeds are, somewhat manipulated, but at the same time, our own imagination, they cannot affect that at all. So as I, just like anything else, as I take my opportunity to go to look at the things that I'm interested in, they can't anticipate what it is that I was looking for.
The problem with that is they identified that problem a few years ago. I've been on Facebook since 2008, when they first
Right.
And what I noticed is the fact that, at that time it was like academia. I mean, there were a lot of people, from universities that were on there, and you could talk to them. I met, my first interviews, I was able to interview Noam Chomsky, a whole bunch of people thanks to that. But the thing with that is that, they perpetuate this illusion of freedom, and now they're minimalizing it, where less and less intellectualized people are allowed, especially if they're anti-capitalist, are allowed to be on Facebook, and it's really become segregation.
Well, and there's a whole society that just doesn't even care to look at it.
I won't believe that.
But my point is that
if they knew they had to, they would. So it's not a question of they won't.
My point is that I've been able to discover things, right? Like, for example, journalists and different publications, and then also like those things that I've talked about with New America Foundation.
Kind of like a puppet, you let it think that it's free, and if it tries to do something, so you let it encourage it when it's doing something that you want it to do, and you know what I mean? But
not exactly. No, see, the thing is that it's like any tool. You can take a hammer and just beat the living shit out of rocks and make smaller rocks. But you can also take a hammer and build an incredibly cool, architectural, device. So what I'm saying is that yes, they've minimized my ability to communicate effectively, but what they haven't been able to take away, both them and LinkedIn and Twitter.
As you said, they see us as a minority. That's not a problem, and that's
no, not at all. That's not what I'm getting at.
Particularly militarily, that is the most stupid thing they can do, to underestimate this minority of today. That's not really what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the fact that now, okay, maybe I can't broadcast as well, but I still have the ability to analyze association. Have you guys used Clout yet? Have you ever seen that application yet?
Yeah, I actually got on that a couple weeks ago.
So I'll use Clout as an example. It's probably not the best example. There's another one out there called Banjo. Have you seen Banjo yet?
I've seen it. I haven't messed with it at all.
Okay, so Banjo is it's a social networking platform for the smartphones. They don't really have a desktop. They were talking about. I went out and talked to those guys, but they were talking about actually building a desktop platform. But anyway, these applications give you a form of association. Banjo, the association is kind of geographic, and social, and clout is social and influential. So, to give you an example, let's say choose somebody like yourself or like myself, and we're on clout. We can go on clout and then see, okay, what things did he get the most hits on? And what were those things? And then you can go to those things and say, well, who were those people that commented on that? And who were those people that did that? So I spent a lot more time doing that kind of stuff to see, okay, who commented on that guy's things, and where's that guy from, and what's he associated with? Now I'm going to go look him up on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to go look him up on Twitter. Now I'm going to see his associations on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to see his associations on Twitter. I was like, oh, he's associated with these kind of people. Oh, this, and then you can kind of gauge, like, not finitely, but you can gauge, I guess, from a.
I know all of this, but what I'm saying is that I think you grandiously underestimate your power.
No, that's not true. Because what I'm trying to get at is that some of it is superfluous. Okay, yeah. So you got that. It's kind of useless. So then, once you get that information, right? How do you apply that to your context of the information now that you have access to? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
so now that I understand who's publishing it and who's subscribing to it, because I can see who publishes stuff and who subscribes to stuff now, who's commenting on it, and then I can see where they work, what their associations are on those platforms, if they're dumb enough to put all their information out there, right? So the same thing they're doing to us, in a much more grand way, we can kind of do to what it is that we're analyzing, right? So our analytical capabilities are still haven't been curtailed. But what I do with that information is I try to gain perspective on the kinds of articles that are being written, so that if I do find an audience, and whether it be small, big, or something, at least I have a kind of a different context based upon the access to information I have.
Capitalism has a major flaw because, okay, so yeah, this minority that has access to all these things, that lives mostly in America and Europe and tiny parts of Asia, tiny parts of Africa and South America, they have access, so they can do all these bad things to us or whatever, but they're still a minority. And what I'm talking about is, in terms of critical mass, there's still these billions of poor people, they don't even bother to brainwash these people anymore, These people.
Well, that's not true. I mean, okay, so Africa's the biggest continent on the planet, right? That's where we probably killed in my lifetime roughly 20 to 25 million people.
But even in Africa, you have Nigerians that are against the petrol corporations. In Libya, you have anti-monarchists who are saying.
Well, Nigeria's a great example. Let's analyze Nigeria. So Nigeria is about the size of Pakistan, right? 160 some odd million people, and here you have a society that is majority are poor. And it's been incredibly raped by the West and the oil empires. 10%.
It worked for USAID. Who knows?
Well, USAID is yet another government front company. Yeah. So these, it's an oxymoron. So
as is all with American policy.
Yeah. So Nigeria is a good example. But my point is that you don't have to brainwash these people if you're putting them through misery. The survival instinct goes in, and they can't fight. You haven't given them the capacity to fight. And you can easily remove their capacity to fight by sending in massive amounts of arms to both sides, and that's what we do.
What's going to happen when the poor people are involved in? Yeah, okay, so they can automize the planet, but that's not been done totally yet.
That's been done for the last half century. By the Americans in a big way, but prior to that, it was being done by the rest of the Europeans across Africa. So this is a status quo for the societies that you're describing, the poor societies. It's a very easy. You don't have to use propaganda. You use death and destruction.
Hold on, but we're really getting into another global slave system with mass genocides happening. So we're in a period of humanity where all of this collapsed because they talk about creating another world war, But in order to,
you don't need a world war. The world is at war. Right?
Yeah. That's
you've been in your whole life. You've been in world wars.
World War III, yeah. No,
World War 12. Are you kidding me?
No,
I mean, which one? Which World War do you want to talk about?
It's actually World War One still.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's either World War One or World War 44, which or somewhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, but compared to, I'm talking about American history here with slavery.
Are we talking about the escalation of
slavery, etc., and in the past 300 years, how we had a anti-slavery policy, which is mainstream. I mean, nobody in the mainstream who's brainwashed wants slavery for the most part. We can agree on that.
Well, let's look at a sine wave of death. All right, let's talk about that. Okay, maybe during World War I and World War II, the sine wave went up. Okay, but it didn't go away. I mean, there's still, after World War II, you had just massive amounts of murders across Ukraine. You had massive amounts of murders across Africa. You had massive amounts of murders in the Korean Peninsula. You had massive amounts of murders, 10 years later throughout Southeast Asia with Indonesia and Vietnam. And now you got massive amounts of murders that continue through our lifetime.
Take it as a big garden, you see. If you're constantly killing your own garden, nothing is going to grow. The ground is going to kill itself because of all the chemicals you
exactly.
So you're destroying your own self when you do these things. That's why I'm saying.
No. They're killing their own garden because you don't have to waste your time propagandizing these environments. Just keep them in chaos, and they'll take care of themselves.
Eventually,
they'll weed themselves.
Same molecules that they use kill the plants and transform them and create them so that even those plants create more toxins.
The only place you'll see stability is where they can reap benefit from the resources.
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance is wealth, you see.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, Mali is a great example. Mali had been stable for a long time, and the only reason it went unstable because they couldn't control the revolutionary forces that they fabricated in Libya. And once they wanted them out of there after Gaddafi was gone, they had nowhere else to go, and they started robbing from the French colonials. And they say, hey, we can't handle this by ourselves. Anybody want to help out? And so here come the British and the Americans to wipe out the guys.
Operation Gladio, after all these operations, even after with the Iraq War, the U.S. military decided, okay, we have to get Canada on board, we have to get France on board. So all of these things, there are a lot of French people within our government who are not happy about what is going on, and in a lot of governments all over the world, and right now they want to create this globalist empire where they involve all these governments. They're going to have a very hard time.
I mean, okay, let's go back to Greece, for example. Okay, modern day Greece probably seen some of the most, not unlike Spain, unfortunately, because they're much bigger. There's only 10 million people in Greece, but I'd say probably, I think it's the population of Athens is somewhere around 4 million now, 3 or 4 million. But any case, the majority of protests in Greece happen, in Athens. Protests happening on places like Crete and Thessaloniki and other larger populous areas across the country are minuscule. But even the kind of protests that are happening in Greece are actually quite small, and they don't happen very often.
They're minuscule compared to what exactly? But because you can contrast that, they're minuscule, but neo-Nazis all over Europe are cowardly minuscule today because they're unable to enforce these premises, and you have actually more anarchists today fighting against these fascistic measures of social control than you had ever in the past. So mathematically, no, our numbers are increasing and their numbers are decreasing. Obviously, if you talk on the level of their... That's why I say, they're always saying, oh, we have 1 billion Islamists, 2 billion Christians. Says who? Says the United States of America that lies every fucking time it possibly can just for short-term benefit, not even long-term, and you need to think and think very hardly about your long-term, because short-term can always combust your long-term probabilities, and that's exactly what they've done. The United States has completely gone, into this premise of, greed is good, but they've completely lost sight of what creates that balance within all empires. A Julius Caesar, something like that, something that is actually helping poor people, not pretending while doing the complete opposite, thinking, okay, we've created these systems where we can totally screw people over, and they'll believe it. They'll believe it for a time.
Well, anyway, the point that I was trying to make with Greece is that here you have a society that's probably considered one of the more vocal and probably more violent, protesters, and easily, they've had since World War II, probably at least half a dozen major attempts at a Commonwealth uprisings. And every time they've been put down. They were put down in 73. They were put down in 63. They have been put down recently, the austerity measures. And whether you're talking about, the right wing or the not as much right wing, because they don't really have an anarchist party there either. But the PASOK party was all the Papandreou family. These guys were tied into the British Empire, and they pretty much dominated politics.
Even the Greek neo-Nazis think that guy was an ass. So you have a problem.
Well, PASOK, are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, Papandreou family, you got to take a real close look. The father, the grandfather, the son, and the grandson ran that country for the British and the American empires, and basically were a puppet state. And then every once in a while, what would be considered, they were considered sort of the socialists.
They were the monarchists who were putting back King Constantine with the CIA.
But in the eyes of the people, they were seen as the socialists. And then on the what was the further right wing side would have been they called them the New Democracy guys.
I agree that socialist movement got completely usurped by communists and fascists.
No, it had nothing to do with communism. See, so in Greece, the PASOK party,
Nazism are both fascism. They're just opposite.
Yeah, I understand that. But I'm talking about Greece in per se.
Yeah.
In Greece, I know the politics and the history of Greece really well. I mean, I've lived there. What's that?
I've gone there like almost every summer.
No, I'm not talking about going there. I'm talking about living there, and I'm telling
I lived there for months on end. Yes.
Yeah, but my point is PASOK, which is is a green party is their color, but it's actually it's more of a socialist party to the people. But it was the puppet party for the left. It had nothing to do with communism. Yes. It had zero to do with communism. On the right, the further right side, because the PASOK party was right-wing to me too. On the further right side, you had the neo-democracy guys, the Neo-Anarchadia, and these were the what would be considered like a Republican Party in the United States, where they have much better access to finance and a lot better control of the banks and their own little mafia. Yeah. And they actually played Russia and used Russia as a tool against the West. So anytime that they came to power, they would align themselves with Russia and try to do extra things with Russia on the Neo-Democratia side. And they were only doing that as a method in order to gain power against the Western influence on the other party, because they would basically go and make concessions in order to take power away from the puppet party that the Americans had put in place alongside the British to actually run the country. And with the Papandreou family, you have to look at the grandfather, the son, and the grandson.
I'm going to have to stop you, Scott. I would love to continue this conversation with you. Maybe we can do it after the show or some other time.
Sure, yeah, that's great.
But yeah, we're reaching 2.5 gigabytes over 2 hours, so
you can edit it and cut it up any way you want to. Because I think the problem with these long podcasts, nobody has the time to sit around and listen. And I think what people are really good at is probably maybe 3 to 5 minutes worth of attention.
I agree.
And sadly, that's all you're ever going to get.
But not all of us. The people who are receptive and want that information, they'll get it.
I will sit through programs sometimes live like this. I sat through Susan Lindauer's program when she was talking to Judith Miller. Have you guys caught any of that?
No.
So she's a former CIA, kind of a whistleblower, and she interviewed Lee Harvey Oswald's girlfriend about.
But we have to stop this show, but
Go ahead.
we can keep, like, maybe we can do another record, but just let us do the ending, and then we can talk about it a little bit like that, and we'll just cut it out. Okay. So it's still recording, Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, thank you, Scott Rickard, for coming on our show tonight. And it was really a very exciting conversation, and we would have loved to continue it, but our podcasts unfortunately have to be in little clips of 30 minutes. We can't do hour-long odd podcasts, but anyways, it was great to have you on our show, and maybe we can do another show in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was interesting to kind of freestyle all over the map type of stuff. But obviously, if you cut things up, hopefully we'll have a something that somebody will take the time to listen to at one point or another.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Scott, it was good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Maybe we can talk again sometime.